Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas,
Hi, I'm Sal Cosenza.
and welcome to Abstract Essay. Abstract Essay is created to empower artists like us. Don't you think, Mr. Sal?
I feel empowered.
Indeed, we are empowered people through this podcast. So another week, another episode on Abstract Essay. Another masterpiece of Mr. Sal Cosenza that we gonna scrutinize.
Yes, scrutinize away.
All the paintings, in fairness, are so magnificent. As I said before, Mr. Sal have the DNA of Leonardo da Vinci.
I'm
Che
not even.
buona.
I'm not even close. I'm
Not
like,
even close. Who knows, right?
I'm
Probably a
400 feet and like 3 centuries away from him. I mean, that guy was, he was a genius.
She's a genius, a polymath, as they said.
Yes.
So, do you think that nowadays there is a Leonardo da Vinci that are rising or that is
Um,
rising?
it's a very interesting question. I think that we have technology that has arrived, like the use of the incorporation of AI
Mm,
in the world, I think has a lot of artistic potential. So I guess it's a tough one though. I don't. It's a different world. We're talking about somebody who excelled in engineering, in painting, in sculpture, in writing and journaling, and I mean,
everything.
we have the tools, we have the technology. Yeah, I think there's a little Leonardo in all of us in some way.
Definitely.
I think we're
Yes.
spoiled. We are spoiled with the amount of tools that we have to work with.
Yes. We are so lucky that we are living in a age of technology.
Yes.
Comparing the time of Leonardo da Vinci manually. Imagine.
Yeah, that was the what do you call it? Analog? That was
Analog.
pre-analog. Now we're in post-digital. We're not even
Analog.
in like we're
Yes.
not even in like a digital generation anymore. We're in like
True.
post-digital. I don't even know what to call it.
Analog and laborious.
It's scary, but it's exciting.
Yes, indeed. So, Mr. Sal, what will be your magnificent paintings that you're gonna talk about today?
So, seeing how far I get today, we're going to cover the 2012, the rest of 2012. I'll hope to get to 2013 and maybe, just maybe, to 2015 in the domestic New York collection, which is ongoing. We've turned this into like it's going to be probably 6 or 7 episodes, but,
That's awesome.
again, just give me the big hook and I'll go off the screen. Let me know if I go too long, but it's
Oh,
really interesting talking about them and revisiting them.
in totally agree. So, drum roll, please.
Okay. Nope. Ah, I
The-
never land. I never stick to landing. Um, but do
wow.
you see we're in Giza? We're in Egypt.
Yes,
Okay.
Pyramid of Egypt.
So what I did in 2012, I mean, we looked at a couple last episode from that year, but most of that year I had the buildings traveling the world. I did this sort of little mini series within the series called Domestic New York Around the World, and then you had part one through I think seven. I did seven of these. And I was going through my archives. I found these bookmarks that I created. So when these were first put in Art One Gallery, they came with a little bookmark that whoever bought it would get to read a little description about it. So I was thinking I would read these. Um, they're about a paragraph each as
Yes,
we
go
go
ahead.
through each painting, and feel free to jump in whenever or interrupt or. But here we go. So Domestic New York Around the World Part 1 is what we're looking at. This is the 33rd entry in the Domestic New York series. It marks the start of the Around the World mini collection. And so for the first stop on this trip, Chrysler and Empire State Buildings have taken a journey to the Great Pyramids of Giza in Egypt.
Yay!
Towering above our photogenic friends is the ever formidable Sphinx, once carved out of a huge outcrop of rock adjacent to the monumental pyramids. One can only wonder what Egyptian mysteries are lying in wait for the buildings to discover. So that was this one. They're all the same size. They're 8 inches by 10 inches each. So that was part one. Here we go to part two in
Wow.
in the City of Light. Okay, so this one, for their second stop, the Chrysler and Empire State Buildings are shown having an unforgettable glass clinging. I'm sorry, I messed it up. They're
Go
having
ahead.
an unforgettable glass clinging moment amid the City of Light, known to romantics the world over as Paris. As they indulge in the splendor of the French skyline at night, the buildings cannot help but be all aglow themselves. This is a true case of back east meets French. Oui, oui, indeed.
Oui, au revoir.
Au revoir.
So,
That's
I
see,
have a
that's better.
question, Mr. Sal. If you're
Yeah.
given the chance, which one of these countries do you want to visit right now?
Mm.
Egypt or Paris?
I would say Paris. I have yet to see it. The Eiffel Tower I always held up here.
Yes,
Um, I mean, I'll take them both.
both. Why not, right?
Ideally, I would,
Yeah.
my boss went to the pyramids of Giza and took this amazing photo from the top. I don't know how he got up there, but from the top of one of the pyramids looking down towards the
Yes,
ground. And I did see that and I wanted to partake.
to do that too.
So the answer is I want to go to both places.
Ah, fair enough.
I need to go on the Price is Right game show so that I can win this package. Um,
Certainly. Who knows? We're gonna be a millionaire tomorrow, right?
Maybe I'll
Maybe.
apply today. So here's part two. So then
Yes.
we're taking a bit of a break, so bear with me. This is not part of that mini series. What happened was during this time I did it was an art auction, and so I was asked to just produce a piece for that art auction, which raised money for I think it was local art materials, local students in Arizona. So this one, and it's kind of a mature theme, but the name of this piece is called Domestic New York, Caught in the Act. It's 14 inch by 18 inches. It's from 2012. This one really has an homage to Madeleine Riesendorp, who was the Dutch painter that I talked about in the beginning, who helped just really inspire me for this series. So you have little things like the Goodyear blimp on the bottom, um, sort of towards the bottom right of the canvas. Um, it's a Goodyear blimp. It also could be something else, but we won't say what that is. But Madeleine Riesendorp had painted those in her original pieces. Um, but anyway, so I have a description for this. So it is having kids can be a beautiful thing, but not when two buildings are looking to have some alone time. So this is the 35th installment, which explores the humorous aspects of juggling lovemaking with parenthood. The parents here are the Chrysler and Empire State Buildings, seen cuddling up with some chilled wine and expectations of a rather lovely evening. Suddenly, though, they get caught in the act when their child, Philadelphia's One Liberty Place, carrying the teddy bear, pops in. It seems Mom and Pop now have some creative explaining to do.
Mm,
And moving on.
indeed. Indeed, they need to explain something.
Yeah, this one, I mean, how many parents go through that? I'm sure a ton, right?
Lots.
Anyway, okay. I'm glad we're on the same page about that. All right, back to the around the world. So this is part three. So East Coast meets the Wild West for the building's third trip as Chrysler and Empire State Buildings take in the sights of Scottsdale, Arizona. And I was born in Scottsdale, by the way. So being a Scottsdale native, I lovingly include many of the city's notable landmarks. See if you can spot Art One Gallery, the Praying Monk, Porter's Western Wear store, and the famous Scottsdale Cowboy, as well as the old Adobe Mission Church. Let's ride. Who
Let's
wrote
ride.
who wrote this?
I
It's
did.
as I look back at what I'm writing, I'm like, this is the cheesiest stuff.
Every time you
But
go back, something is like, oh, did I do this?
exactly, I'm like, I don't think that the text aged as well. I think the paintings aged okay for the most part.
Mhm.
But but anyway, let's continue.
Let's continue.
So around the world, part four is what we're looking at now. So this one is the 37th entry in the entire domestic New York series. And here we go. It seems suspense and intrigue dominate the Chrysler Building's Roman visit as she sits mysteriously in the dark, possibly eluding capture from the shadowy figure lurking from behind. When in Rome, you see, Mrs. Chrysler does it how she likes it, dangerously. Enshrouded in cigarette smoke, Mrs. Chrysler feels history calling to her from every stone in this black and white landscape they call the Eternal City. Benvenuti a Roma.
Benvenuti di Roma.
That one
Tutti
was okay, right?
Italiano.
That
Sì.
description was
Bellissima.
okay, thank you. And
Ah.
this one, it's sort of the film noir kind of concept again, black and white with very minimal color in it. So the cigarette, the flame of the cigarette is just a little hint of color. But I was also paying tribute to Fellini films, the famous Italian director.
Yes.
Okay, next one. Uh-oh.
Yes. What is
Hide the
this?
hide the kids. Okay, so this one
Money,
is
money, money.
this one's the 38th in the series. Around the World Part 5 we're up to. So here we go. Las Vegas, Nevada. The
Mm.
city with endless casinos, showgirls, and 24-hour wedding chapels. Should the itch to get hitched be too tempting, seems to be giving our buildings the royal flush.
The royal
Honestly,
flush.
honestly, who wrote this? I like to forge a complaint.
I
Will the
did.
Chrysler, will the Chrysler and Empire State Buildings be able to resist this magical land of neon make-believe? Um, or are they headed for the big casino in the sky? Two Rat Pack era casinos, the Sands and the Tropicana, frame the action and provide a dreamy notion of classic Vegas glitz. The showgirl well does the rest. So I remember painting this one, and obviously everything's got a neon sort of glow to it. The showgirl, I named her Lady Luck. You could see the tattoo on her arm. But you have, again, yeah, Chrysler and Empire sort of getting sucked into this vortex of cash and dice and playing cards. And so it sort of, I tried to encapsulate Vegas, the feeling of Vegas in one sort of little 8 by 10 painting.
8 by 10.
Yep. All right. And
Nice.
this one, here we go. So this is the second to last Around the World piece, Around the World Part 6. So when two buildings are in Japan, there is only the need to realign their inner and outer selves. And what better way to get this done than by stripping down to their architectural essentials and climbing into a large steaming tub of water? Even buildings need some rest and recreation. Smothered in suds and overlooking a serene Japanese vista, it seems the Empire State and Chrysler buildings have realigned something. So that's part
Arigato
6.
gozaimasu. Ah, Japanese.
Which means, please continue, Sal. Please
Please
just
continue. Please continue,
so
Mr.
yeah.
Sal. Arigato gozaimasu. Hai.
Wee wee? No, wee wee is the wrong way. I'm like a deer in the headlights right now, Daniel.
Oh, yes.
All right. And now we come to the final around the world. That was quicker
Around the
than I thought.
world. Yes, so
So this
fast.
one, here we go. And what better way to end than at the bottom of the world? So Antarctica.
Mm.
Antarctica can be a cold place, even in the dead of summer. All vacations must end eventually, and both Chrysler and Empire State Buildings have had it. Their exhausting journey around the world has made them miss their bedrock, and New York is no place in sight. Lost and overwhelmed by that thing called, quote, nature, unquote, the buildings just want to get home. The only problem, of course, is that they are at the edge of the world. Taxi? Question mark.
Taxi? No.
Anyway, you have killer whales
Airplane.
here. You got penguins.
Oh,
You got
yes.
a sign the Chrysler's holding said, "Help, lost, need lift back to New York. God bless." You got Empire sitting on, actually, they're both sitting on a pile of luggage. So this is what happens when vacations go for too long.
Yes.
And
Too long.
I think if I remember, um, oh, what was the artist? Lisa Frank. Have you ever heard of Lisa Frank?
No.
So
Can you tell us about it?
when I was in elementary school, I
Yes.
think everyone had a Lisa Frank folder, and
Yes.
it was just this, she had this particular style. Like everyone had Lisa Frank in Arizona anyway, in elementary school, and there were a lot of like orca whales and penguins. So I think this was sort of my own sort of homage to Lisa Frank as well.
Wow.
But I had fun painting this one, I remember. All right.
In
So guess what?
quite.
We're done with the around the world, but what's going
Yes.
on here?
Oh, Miss Liberty
I
is.
have more. So we're in the year 2013. This one's called Domestic New York Liberty's Upkeep. And this is the 41st Domestic New York painting. So here we go. This unabashedly voyeuristic scene depicts Lady Liberty engaged in a very personal moment, taking a break for a bit from her public role as American icon, hence her empty pedestal seen through the window's reflection. Lady Liberty needs to maintain her beauty at all costs. If only she had kept the window closed. So
For sure.
2013. And I do remember painting, so you could see like the Ellis Island pedestal in the reflection of the glass
Yes.
without the statue there, because obviously she's grooming herself, right? But that scene, that window and that reflection were taken from The Godfather Part 2, when
Wow.
Michael Corleone is, not Michael, Vito Corleone is a little kid, and he just makes the trek from Sicily to New York, and he has to stay in Ellis Island, and he's looking out the window and singing. And so I took that shot. Now, granted, there was not a tub and toilet in that scene, but then also the tub that Lady Liberty's using, the bathtub is a vintage one. So the
Wow.
plumbing, you could see it on the wall, is sort of like an old design. The legs of the tub are Art Deco, sort of little Chrysler building esque Chrysler design. So I remember I had fun with this one for some reason.
You
Um,
laugh. For
okay,
sure.
yes.
Imagining Miss Liberty.
I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway. Well, I mean,
Uh,
she's got I worry about her. She's got a life too. All
yes.
right. This one, okay, so by this time, we're in the year 2013, 2014. I was living in New York at this time. Um, I think when I came back on vacation here, I made these paintings. So these were all made in Arizona still, but at a certain point I started making pieces in New York, but we haven't seen those yet. But anyway, so here we have from the year 2014. This is called Domestic New York. We're getting off here. And do I have? Yes, okay. I have a description for this. So this one is watercolor and ink on paper. This one did not take as long as the others, but I was experimenting with some watercolor. It's really mixed media, but it does sort of pay tribute to some experiences I've had or have heard about in New York in the subway, because that's its own world in the subway.
Yes.
So here's the description. So taking a ride on the New York subway provides opportunities to be confronted with a wide variety of personalities and different social circumstances, whether or not one is always prepared for this. So symbolism runs amok in the 42nd domestic New York entry, including but not limited to the nervously precautionary subtitle, "We're getting off here," right? And the highly superficial subway ad. So the ad, it says Dr. Zittner's Advanced Skincare. So there really was a doctor. It was Zisner, I think, and I kind of threw a cheap shot and called him Zittner because he deals with skincare. So like a zit. Anyway, the result, Daniel, is a piece is a piece that offers up several socially relevant issues, be they whether they're problems of drug abuse, homelessness, consumerism, right? Although each is fashioned in the domestic New York tradition. So what I always found bizarre and jarring about, going in the subway, like going to work in the subway or whatever, is you have this clash of um, just economic situations, right? You have people shopping at Macy's, you have big bags, right, of whatever they bought, and then you have people who, live in the trains, right, and
Yes.
have nothing, or whatever they're carrying on their backs is what they own. So it was always sort of a very startling juxtaposition, right, of different classes working, like different economic classes in one tube, right, in one moving tube. So I wanted to sort of convey that in this piece. All right. Okay, so now well, we made it to 2015.
2015.
Yeah, so this
Amazing.
one, I have a description for this. These were painted in Arizona, these next two that we're going to see, but they were 12-inch by 36-inch in dimension. This first one we're looking at is called Domestic New York. She was bad, she was dangerous.
Oh, wow.
So here we go. The clues were everywhere, be it the Venus flytrap painting or the champagne suspiciously set for two, but the Chrysler Building's sexy pose hid her intentions for the approaching Empire State Building. Was this dame his friend or his foe? This is the 43rd chapter in the Domestic New York series, and it pays tribute to the Hollywood-styled seductress type. Notably, the subtitle is taken from Fred Astaire's classic monologue during the Girl Hunt segment of 1953's film The Bandwagon. So what are you waiting for? Come on in.
Come on
Come on
in.
in. And actually,
Go to the world.
there's a Michael Jackson song called "Dangerous,"
Oh,
and
yes.
in it he takes the "She was bad, she was dangerous" part, and he inserts that in the song. So he got that from Fred Astaire. But yeah, you have all the trappings here of, you know, a seductress. The Venus flytrap sort of represents that, right? The Empire State Building. We don't really know what his role is. We just see his shadow. He's wearing a fedora here. But obviously the two are lovers, but this was one of the more sort of seducing pieces in the series. Okay,
Excellent.
and this is the last for today. So this one is same dimension as the previous. This is 12-inch by 36 inches. So these were very vertical, right? But I'll zoom in here on just the sort of the main part. Okay, so here we have Domestic New York for the record. And it's like a record player, right? So the Empire State Building strolls into the Capitol recording studio, brimming with a swinging attitude. But tonight's song lineup will not be swinging. Tonight is for serious. Nevertheless, the 102-story singer is primed and ready. A medley of saloon songs are in order for the evening. Songs for losers, as the building calls them. Tonight he sings about angel eyes, about gals that got away, about unrequited love, and about drinking sorrows away. The late-night Sinatra-laden throwback is the 44th chapter in the ongoing Domestic New York painting series. So, obviously, right? This is sort of inspired by the famous Frank Sinatra photos of him recording songs in Capitol Records, or Reprise Records later on, right? So you have this very I put a lot of time trying to paint this faithfully. This is a Capitol Records microphone. You have him, wearing his fedora. This is Empire State Building, obviously, as a stand-in for Sinatra, but you have a very dramatic spotlight hitting him, reflecting off of his hat and the microphone, and then on the sheet music, right? And you could see two sort of really famous saloon songs, sort of written out. So he's recording, again, a saloon song album of sorts, right? So anyone who's a fan of Sinatra would know that he did a lot of sort of torch songs, as he called them, which were not swinging songs. They were really about, they were very depressing, but they're beautiful in their sort of depression. It's a beautiful kind of depression. Um, it's almost like they were therapy, the way he sung. Um, I personally love those types of songs. I don't know. And I would, I listen to them often, but so I wanted to sort of capture this. What's also notable about these two paintings is that I changed up the way I painted the buildings. I found this system for the windows. So, if we look at the detail work on the facade here of the building, I found a system that was much more accurate by this time, for the series. So it just looks more true to the original, the actual buildings. And so this technique for creating them this way was something that would continue for the rest of the series. Because prior to this, the buildings really just had, like I would paint in every single window sort of by hand, like one at a time, and it didn't necessarily line up. I don't know. It's kind of just I'm just sort of commenting on the technique of creating them. I found a system by this point in the series, which was, I think, perfect for what I was doing. So there we are. So next episode, we'll talk about the final 11 paintings in this series. Those last 11 were completed in New York City, and they perhaps were, I would say, the most publicly viewed ones in the whole series. So if we have time next week, we can also look at ways in which they were showcased. They were projected on a screen for a Sinatra concert at one
Wow.
point. We had a singer named Ralph Schneider who sung Sinatra songs, and so these paintings became the backdrop for his concert, and they were also featured in multiple galleries in New York. And then some of them made it back to Arizona and were shown at Art One. So I sort of closed the series out, I think, really on a high note in 2019, um, which is why I sort of stopped. I think I was done at that point. I had nothing else to say with those buildings in that series. But we'll look at that next week. Um,
Yes.
so that's it for now, Daniel. What do you say?
Mr. Sal Cosenza, thank you so much for sharing your paintings to the world. Magnificent. And please do make more paintings of yours. There is one of a kind, and let's sell them to the world. So, to sum up our discussion for today, what techniques did you use to build layers and depth in all your paintings that you
Hmm.
showed us?
Layers and depth. So I paint the background image completely, even if some of it's going to be covered up by a foreground element. It's just my technique. I know of painters who do not do that. They do the opposite. They paint the foreground first and then the background. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not for me. So I need to paint in layers and I complete the layer and then add another layer on top. So that's one technique. And then the other was what I was sort of describing with the windows. What I did was I painted, if I had the Empire State Building, I would paint all of it in black paint first. So I would paint every piece in black, and then I would add a horizontal brush of gray, a
Yes.
thin line that was horizontal going all the way down the building. On top of that, I would then add a vertical line going all the way down, and then shadow to that vertical piece. So what it looked like was a very three-dimensional effect of the windows, followed by the window mullions, and then on top of that was the sort of final skin, like the limestone skin or brick. So it was a much more time-consuming process, but I think again the results were much truer to what I was intending. So like the first 30 or so paintings in that series, I would paint each window. I would paint the whole thing
One by one.
gray and then just do, yeah, like a one by one little tick mark. And it wasn't always lining up and it bothered me. So I switched. Um, yeah.
But anyway, congratulations, another masterpiece of yours. So this will be my last question. What would be your advice for those people out there want to start their own painting?
That's a really good question. I would say be open to discovery, right? Congratulations on starting it, number one.
Yes.
And then that's bold, right? You've jumped in the pool. So now, are you going to do backflips? Yeah, what are you going to do? Are you going to dive? Are you going to, brushstroke? No, what is it? Breaststroke. Well, brushstrokes and breaststrokes. Yeah, so I would say just embrace the experience of painting. And the more you do it, the more you're going to want to do it some more.
True. Try and try and try until you be better. Just like Mr. Sal Cosenza. So people, before we go, I want to plug in my new baby podcast, Mental Health 101, in its first season. People, first season. Please do listen wherever you listen your podcast. This podcast is created to empower our mental health awareness. So, Mr. Sal, would you like to plug in your book?
I thank you, and I will. My book is out. It's Manhattan: The Rising War, available, I guess, where a lot of booksellers are, or wherever books are sold, or whatever they say. If you're local to Arizona, check it out at Changing Hands Bookstore, which is an indie bookstore in Phoenix and Tempe. Otherwise, it's on BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon. But
yes, indeed. People,
thanks for the shameless plug. Thank you.
Let's support Mr. Sal Cosenza, because if you support him, more empowering books, more empowering paintings to come. So, Mr. Sal, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome, people. See you soon.